The sound of the weekend coming. Except for it's a Thursday, we're getting dangerously close to the downhill slide of the
Tomorrow's
work
Good
week.
Friday, though.
Yes, Good Friday is about here. This is Heidi Hatch with KUTV 2 News. Maura Carabello in the house, in a scarf. Greg Hughes here in a hat. All of a sudden, we've got winter back again.
Yes, I'm just
Cold.
so upset about it.
I was in St. George yesterday.
Oh, so that was
mid-80s. Yeah, it was hot.
This is the time of year where your body can adjust. You're like, do we need heat or do we need air
I
conditioning?
mean, I should be more specific. I was sitting in a conference room in St. George.
Oh, you weren't in a swimsuit by the pool?
And the people outside looked hot.
Yeah.
Oh.
And yesterday I was in a short sleeve shirt. Now I'm in a hoodie and a beanie hat because I'm freezing.
It's spring.
And, yeah. You know, in spring, well, you know what it does? It gives us this until it's 90. Like, you don't get any kind of, like,
There's no
enjoyable,
in-between.
dependable weather that's warm and comfortable. You just go from this to...
It's true. And I was running late for work, so if you're watching on the video, I have like half my makeup on, but I was trying to get out the door and my son came home to get his camping gear because there's snow and rain in the forecast. He got, do you know what would be great? Go into a slot canyon to camp with his friends. And I was like, dude, why are we doing this? But
Nothing better than some late teens in a slot canyon.
yeah, I did talk him out of the slot canyon. He's still camping though, but I go to the worst case scenario in all situations. That's how I parent because of news. And so he's just like, Mom, it's gonna be fine.
It could be a flash flood.
Yeah, I know. So that's what I told him. I'm like, what if you get on a crash on the way there? And he's like, what if? So anyhow, he's camping in this weather. Hope he has a great time.
Ew.
But you know how kids are. You have to, like, once you make the decision, you really just have to stick with it. You can't change.
Totally.
Yeah, so here we go. Lots to talk about today. I want to bring this up first just because I saw it on X just a few minutes ago, but Lieutenant Governor Deidre Henderson said she's going to be doing a full citizenship audit of the voter rolls. This one caught me a little bit off guard because I thought that Utah already did a good job at cleaning out their rolls and making sure they were clean. Maura, is this a good idea because everyone should do it anyways, or do you think this is a political play for something?
100% political play. I'm kind of bummed because Henderson, prior to this, has held down sort of sensible land of, you know, she's a bona fide Republican, but she tries to lead with common sense. This is just, I don't know who she needs to virtue signal for. This is a solution looking for a problem. I mean, it's already done. You're already in America, can't register if you're a non-citizen. We don't have any stats or problems with this, but it is the comment of the day that we are looking for big, bad non-Americans. So this is highly political.
Well, I think there's been audits that shown that people have, and you can say it's not statistically relevant, but I think if you have people with multiple voter registrations or you have problems, we can always improve those processes. And so I think there just becomes, I think it adds to cynicism or worry if someone says everything's fine here, nothing to do, nothing to worry about. And I think it stems from this KSL story where it said that the Lieutenant Governor called the SAVE Act, which is what Senator Lee is promoting, which would require federally or emphasize, if it's already law, and it is, that you have proof of citizenship to be able to cast a vote. And I would imagine that would mean also residency in whatever jurisdiction you're voting in. Whether the quote from the Lieutenant Governor was accurate or not, it does quote her in the headline as saying that SAVE Act is problematic and impractical, which did create a bit of a buzz, a negative buzz.
But a political buzz. Like, these are all political statements.
Yeah, and it's like on social media. It's on X. It's on. Elon Musk picked it up and thought that it was
serious discussion.
Not what you'd want to hear from your elections chief, and so it has received, I think, some political pushback.
Yeah. One thing that I do think is interesting that I think people have questions about here in the state of Utah is usually when you get your driver's license, there's a box you can check to become a registered voter. That's how most people do it, probably when they turn 16, and then eventually when you're 18, you can vote. We have driving privilege cards for anyone here in the state, and that was passed by the legislature years ago, making it so that we at least knew who was driving on the roads, people were insured. And so I think some people question whether if they're getting driver privilege cards, they check that same box, or if that's even an option. So I guess we'll get some answers from the Lieutenant Governor soon.
I also just real quickly, I thought that any of the comments, and this does get under my skin politically, if we're arguing that this birth certificate somehow has a chilling effect and married women can
we're talking about the SAVE Act now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying that where we talk about driver's privilege card and everything else, women that get married can vote. And anyone that wants to say that if you get married and you have to show a proof of ID, it somehow is going to prevent you from voting. I know my wife votes. I know Deidre Henderson votes. I know that women vote. And I don't think that I think we come up with these contrived logical extremes, and saying that
Like
having a
immigrants
proof of,
are voting,
Well,
that kind of contrived
well,
illogical
if
extreme.
if you think that's an extreme, I think it would be a worse. I think it's more unlikely that if you get married, you somehow and have to show citizenship in
Right,
this
they're
country, you no
referring to
longer
the
can
law.
vote.
So
Yeah.
you're referring to the past. They're saying an unintended consequence of a redundant, non-necessary big government law, which is what the Republicans are proposing, might be that your legal documents will no longer align under the current jurisdictional instruction
Yeah, and I
that the
think that's
SAVE
just-
Acts would instruct.
I think it's a falsehood. I don't even think it
Yeah,
has
I mean,
any
it's a
merit. I don't think
falsehood
it's real.
that
So
it's
why
a
say
real
that's
problem
why
that
is that
immigrants-
problematic for all the reasons
Why
you
say
said,
that immigrants are
which
voting?
I
It's
don't
the
concur.
same issue.
I don't concur that any of what you just said is true, but if your big crescendo is because women who get married can't vote, that is a false conclusion.
I say don't change from your family name. Just keep it.
Oh,
Okay,
dang
well,
it, now I can't vote.
Everybody has
You
to,
can't
I don't
vote.
know, there's a lot of great voters out there that if you have to change your name would be somehow, thwarted.
You mean the change they already changed? The
Maybe-
name? I mean, well, that's what they're saying. They're saying that this requires an unnecessary step.
It doesn't,
It's
though. It's
unnecessary
been
in
happening
government.
all along,
It's
all
already
this time.
codified in government. This is once again some virtue
I think it's-
signaling
I
about
think it's-
some fear mongering of
What do they call, what do they
immigrants.
call it?
Maybe it's
They call
time we
it,
talk about whether women should even
hostile
be able to vote.
compliance.
Maybe they
We
should
should go
just
back
stay
to
home,
that.
Now,
yeah.
if you
Maybe
want to
it
have
was
that
too far, too
conversation,
fast.
I'm ready to go, okay?
Too far,
'Cause
too fast.
Republicans have been losing the gender gap vote forever, so
Next
I'm
thing you
ready
know,
to
they're gonna wanna be
repeal
president.
that.
So we're out of
Suffrage,
election
women's
season,
suffrage,
and
let's talk
Utahns
about
are fired up after the legislative session. Yesterday, the unions that have been working really hard in the last month turned in more than 320,000 signatures. They're hoping will be verified to overturn the union bill. That would give people a chance on the November ballot to vote for it. We talked about this last week, that there's that month where people can call and talk you out of that. Greg, are you surprised? I mean, that's a lot of work and a lot of signatures. 8% of the voting population they are able to get to sign on to this.
I think if you have the resources to hire signature gatherers and you have a well put out plan, it's something you can accomplish. If it's a grassroots, people are volunteering their time, it is a very difficult task. So I think there's been a lot of resources brought to bear to be able to get these signatures, and so I think they're going to get them. The ones that I've always seen pass seem to have a pattern to them, and that they are the ones that have a highly organized, well-funded effort to get the signatures, because it is a high bar. And so I think this will follow suit, as many of those efforts have that have had that key, and that is highly organized, highly funded, to be able to get those needed signatures.
The union saying that this is one of the most highly organized, most successful citizen-led referendums in Utah history. Would you agree with them on that?
Yeah, they're not wrong from a volume point of view. I mean, actually, just empirically, to do this in 30 days. Now, they're not verified yet. That's what
Right.
we're waiting to
Yep.
see. But the fact that 320,000, so I'm skipping the part where they're registered or not, but I hope the legislature can hear and see that 320,000 plus Utahns
That's a lot of people.
had an opinion about having an opinion. Because remember, what referendums and initiatives do, which is great, is they put things on ballots for discussion. They
Right.
don't themselves make the change. And so I hope that, I suspect they'll qualify. If you are not verifying at a 2-to-1 ratio,
You need, what,
that's pretty
140,000?
amazing. Yeah, you need, so
Over
they've
15
doubled.
Senate
Now, the big
districts.
trick will be distribution for them.
That's right.
Last week, they said they were in around the 6 district or Senate district range. They need 15. And that's where you're going to see the opponents, who are also very well heeled. You'll see the opponents probably taking at the districts that have the fewest percentage over, and you'll
Oh,
just
interesting,
be
okay.
unique. And you remember, in Utah, I can get a list of everyone in Duchesne Senate District. That's not a Senate. Senate District 12, and I can say, oh, look at, there's 212 people, and if we could get that down by another 50, and that's what the strategy will be of the opponents. But I hope either way, our legislators are listening to the fact, like, put down your weapons, you guys have a supermajority, and just listen to the facts that 320,000 Utahns in 1 month are asking you to reconsider this decision.
And here's some of the, for listeners, the law is interesting. 15 of 29 Senate districts. Now, why do we have 29 state senators? Because there were 29 counties, and it used to be the case that each county was represented by one state senator. Then when we went to a population-based district, you have, I think, 8 state Senate districts that have a portion of Salt Lake County in their district. So when you went to, so if you had a district that was just a county and they had to have 8% or some percentage of a presidential election by way of number, you could look to try and, because you have this season where you can ask people, did you really mean to sign it? Did you know what you signed? And they have the option to take their name off of that ballot. And so that effort's going to happen to see if people know what they actually signed. But when you have 8 districts that have Salt Lake County in it, those numbers are going to be large. They're going to be. I think it weighs in favor of anyone that's bringing 340,000 signatures to get validated. That they probably have met that threshold in more than 15 Senate districts. But it will be. It'll be an interesting exercise. But I do think that's a large number to bring forward, and I think it'll.
This is phase 1. So what this does is place it on the 26th ballot. For discussion. So in the interim, if our legislators would like to be a little more self-involved and do some editing in the meantime, they could. I suspect they won't. They're a part of digging in and funding the opponents. But like, if we wait and see it, it is going to be interesting, because then you hurry up because of the pressurized laws that are rather punitive to referendums and initiatives. Then it's interesting because we'll all have this year plus in which the issue is still unresolved, but it's not time to do it.
I leave some space for instance, tax reform. This is a number of years ago, I think, 2019 or 2020. There was this same effort took place to get
was this the food tax one?
Yes.
Yeah.
And when that received enough signatures to qualify for the ballot for consideration to repeal it, they dropped it.
Immediately.
Yes, and so I give some space that if this comes in robust and strong, that they may want to,
Special session?
revisit. Maybe they want to revisit it and maybe not go through that protracted election cycle and issue, in the next even number.
This issue wouldn't be good for anybody, because you can really take this issue a lot of places. This could be a really divisive, sort of hard-fought 18 months if this continues.
It's if you're explaining, you're losing, and I think that a lot of the discussion that's going to have to be, that should be had in an election like this, would have to have a lot of context to it, and that's where it can tend to get bogged down.
Here's what'll be interesting, though. Utah was the Republican leaders in Utah were so heavily applauded nationally for this move. Everyone was like, oh my gosh, look at Utah being able to union bust in a major way. So we have to remember on these issues, even though Utah has very few of the circumstances that surround the issues in union states, this victory of breaking a union has a lot of national appeal. So it'll be interesting to see behind the scenes if our leaders, if they qualify, if it's on a referendum ballot for 26, it'll be interesting to see if Utah gets a lot of external pressure just because of the politics, frankly, in the East. Wanting to use a red state like Utah to do something.
And interestingly enough, in this last presidential election, we saw Republicans and President Trump specifically starting to, instead of push against unions, but work with unions.
Yeah, he's a rare equal opportunity user. So he doesn't see a lot of boundaries.
The words you were using started to sound so positive, and you just slam it down with a pejorative.
He is in fact an opportunist, and he has
not.
done
He's
an
for the
artful
everyday
job
American.
with the unions. He has not dismissed them.
Speak of opportunities, Bernie Sanders and AOC drew a crowd Palm Sunday in Utah this last weekend. I was interested to see how many people showed up because, again, we're not in the cycle of getting ready for an election, but 20,000 people estimated to show up at the University of Utah for the Fight the Oligarchy rally, which is interesting. I've seen people edit sound bites from Bernie Sanders over the last 20 years, and he's always fighting the oligarchy, so this isn't just specifically for Trump, but he and AOC are trying to build a brand and build momentum for the left right now. Maura, are they doing a good job with it, and are they capturing specific attention in states for certain reasons, or is this just a really broad-based look at getting people to think about Democrats and where they're headed?
Yeah, so they're flashpoint politicians, right?
Yeah.
They're very similar to Trump. AOC and Trump have very similar styles, and I've thought that for years, and I think sort of equally of their tactics. I think if I'm going to be intellectually honest about how I want to see the dialogue going in American politics, neither of them represent the dialogue I want to see. AOC and Bernie say things that are appealing to me, right? Where Trump doesn't say things that are appealing to me. But I have to be honest about the fact that this is just flag waving. So if you're in a state like Utah and you're left of center like I am, is it nice to see someone raise the blue flag occasionally? Sure it is. But do I find it a deep discussion of how America moves forward? It sure is not. It's a way to emote. I think a lot of people in America, 50% of America is stressed and 50% is happy. I mean, that's ishy. But so I think you do see this pressure valve relieved. What you did see and what you are seeing in their sweep is, one, they're unabashed about going into red states. And two, they're really sort of rallying. They're rallying behind red meat. Here's the dilemma with both the parties. Many would argue that the Democrats' loss is based on the red meat section of that party. So if AOC and Bernie get ahead, is that a way to take back any Congress or any other office? Probably not. But I think it feels good for people who are angry and frustrated.
But before we move to Greg, I have one quick question for you. So when you look back to 2016, Bernie Sanders got 80% of the vote to Hillary Clinton.
Yeah.
And when you look at Utah, whether it's the Tea Party or Trump or Bernie Sanders, we tend to elect, at least on a national level, it seems we don't go very centrist in the party. It's to the far left or the far right. Is there a reason? Is it because we are such a Republican state that things kind of move to the outside realms of both parties? Or
we like simplicity in America right now, and the extremes speak to simplicity. You know, taxes bad, kids good. They make it simple, they make it easy. It tends to be moral. This is where AOC and Trump are equivalents. She name calls a lot, she blame games a lot. It's all their fault. She lives in a zero-sum land. Bernie's slightly different, right? One thing that Bernie's always been good about is talking and illustrating the everyday person a little bit better. He's a little bit better at tapping into who he's talking about, and that can mask his policy sometimes. Plus, I think one thing that's just frankly appealing about him is that he's been around forever. Like, there's just some kind of familiarity. I will say I don't think he's stumping for president this time. I think he has, 6 times or something.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's part of his game right now, and I think that
it
would be great for the Republicans if he wanted to run again. So I don't know that that's part of his gig, and him dialing back a little, would that help? These are not the leaders of the future for the Democrats, I don't think, but they are laying voice to one big complaint is who's fighting with Trump right now, right? Where's the other voice?
Yeah.
And so I think they're taking a lap. The one thing I would characterize it as, though, is a stadium lap. It makes sense to me that they're selling out stadiums. It makes sense to me that Trump is selling out stadiums. Where I'm frustrated is, where the hell are the adults in the room, and where's that conversation going?
So I think because you mentioned that Bernie Sanders has been talking about the oligarchy since the 90s, and I just think it's performative. I think it doesn't matter what time of or what era, what president. If there's a Republican president, if there's an issue he doesn't like, he's going to point to this mantra of an oligarchy. Nothing says fight the oligarchy more than your first class tickets and your sipping on mimosas and your chartering flights and everything else. I think it's just performative. I don't think there's anything substantive to it. Where I will tell you, I just don't even know how you can compare AOC to Trump, is that guy has been has mastered the art of a politics of addition. He has brought more people that would not have considered themselves Republican or Republican, right of center. He has brought more people together. I think this presidency, particularly this one, more than even the first, there's more transparency. You see the interactions with the press through the roof. I don't know that AOC could survive that level of questions for hours, or that much transparency where you're peppered with so many questions and so many different opinions, and you're expressing what you're working towards, what your issues are. I just think he's doing a lot of this in real time. I think the American people are seeing it very closely, and I don't think you've seen that in past presidencies of any party. And I think it is authentic, and I think it's why you see a far broader support for him. I mean, right now he's still polling. They just CNN's Harry Anton did one of those polls like, do you regret voting for Trump? It's like 2%.
Even
it's-
after
it's-
401ks are
yes,
given?
after all this. So I just think, and you're seeing that the illegal immigration stance, he's enjoying a 60% favorability or higher, depending on who you're asking to deport. I think he's on the right side of the American people. He's staring at the right issues. And I think that AOC, I was sad to hear Maura say that she doesn't think that Bernie and AOC may be the face of the Democrat Party and the ticket coming forward, because I would love for that to be the case. I think they are, I think it is a bit extreme. And so anyway, I think that 20,000, they had a great turnout back in March of 16 when the Bernie bros showed up, and they came out en masse at the University of Utah. And I happen to know because Trump had come that same evening to Salt Lake City, and they kind of came down the hill to visit that rally afterwards. But Bernie has enjoyed a very strong and a popular and strong attendance, but you got to take it into relativity. Is it's 20,000 in Salt Lake City. It's not this whole state's falling over themselves for Bernie Sanders.
20,000 in Salt Lake is more extraordinary.
I think
it's an extraordinary
as opposed
stat.
to in
like
Provo,
I would
think that
in
Salt
Utah,
Lake City is
I
like
think
the
in Utah,
place you would get that.
I don't think it's only from Salt Lake. I think that I think your view of Trump is that of a sycophant. If you look at the aggregated polling results, he's at
70% of the
43%.
population.
43% right now, likability, popularity.
It is a
across
big
the board.
crowd. I always think, because I've never been the one to go to rallies myself because I cover politics, so it's not something I can do. And so it's hard to imagine me in a different life where I were at home on a Sunday, would I ever choose to go see any politician?
Right.
But getting people out of their homes and out of whatever, it's still a lot of people. 20,000 is a lot. You got them to not do whatever they were going to do that day.
Yeah, I mean, 5 days earlier, the 10,000 plus who went to the Capitol to sort of just protest Trump, really.
Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting, we are at that time in America. Again, what I'm looking for, so Trump rallies divisiveness, AOC rallies divisiveness. I'm looking for someone who wants to give us direction and leadership, and I'm not finding that yet.
Yeah, I need AOC to be consistent in her accents because she changes. It depends
She
where
does
she's at.
change her
I do
accent.
love her fashion, though. She has some great choices she has. Utah named the best state with the best economic outlook for the 18th straight year. This is the Rich States, Poor States report. As I was looking through it, though, we're not number one in every area. And when you look at overall tax burden, Utah, oddly enough, with how well we're doing on an economic outlook, our tax burden's fairly high compared to other states across the country. Greg, is that a problem? Are we going to have a problem staying where we're at if we have a more of a blue state tax burden instead of a red state tax burden?
Sure. If I think in 2007, if Utah would have just kept the exact tax climate or tax code, tax rates, and regulatory climate that they had in 07, if they had that today under the same matrix of which states are ranked high at top and bottom, they would be 23rd. So this is a continuing effort. I don't think Utah rests on its laurels on any kind of ranking. I think they're always staring. I know I did at what the tax burden looks like, what the regulatory climate looks like for economic growth. And I think that, honestly, my friend President Stuart Adams, I think his whole self-esteem rests on this ranking. I think he just absolutely with and I think Speaker Schultz appreciates it too, but Stuart Adams, President Adams, boy, he's after this. He wants this.
They're getting the plaque for the office wall.
This is a bar. You are going to, out of his cold dead fingers, ever take this number one ranking away from this man. He absolutely loves that Utah stays competitive and stays first in the nation on these issues. So you have states like Tennessee that really made a charge at this ranking for their regulatory climate, for their tax burdens, and they do some really smart things in Tennessee that they don't bond amazingly for infrastructure, which I find crazy. But they use real money; they pay cash. But anyway, I think that Utah, this isn't just a by chance ranking that they keep coming in number one. I think that takes active work every year, and I think that the Utahns in our economy are a beneficiary of it.
We're ranked highly in many different metrics, U.S. World Report, all those. I love some of them. This is not one I'm particularly pleased how aspirational we're about. So one of the things I like is that you sourced our ranking. And I'm proud of the fact that I do think we run an efficient government, and I do think that we coordinate and work together, and all the Utah things that we hear I think are real and they exist. This one I worry about for a couple of reasons. One is one Greg just said. we want it a lot. So we actually look to the index and we try and see. The other thing that we do is
Cool girls don't want things. You're not supposed to
yeah,
care.
exactly. And who we
Like,
care
whatever.
about is a little something called Alec. And I'm a little worried. One of the reasons we get this, one of the reasons we get the pretty girl nod is we shill and take up a lot of Alec causes. And so I don't like the relationships between an external DC organization calling our legislative agenda as much as it does. Frankly, I think our guys could come up with it on their own, and so I'm a little
I
disappointed.
think they do, really. I don't think they carbon copy that.
I'm pretty sure the cut and pasting goes
Hot
on.
states rock like this.
Yeah,
Look, it's
exactly.
a fiscally conservative
Exactly.
organization, so of course fiscal
Right,
conservative
so
approaches are going
but
to
we've gotten
align.
a little lazy about the cut and paste. So one, I don't like how much we want to be like
You're such a
Frasier.
cynic.
The other, well, no,
Yes.
I'm a reader. So the other thing that stresses me out a little
agree.
bit is some of the foundation that this is based on. My sweet little daughter is going to spend half the summer in Denver because of Utah's $7.25 minimum wage, which is one of the huge indicators of getting this #1 ranking. So we're
Is
number
that how much she
one.
made at her fruit cutting job last summer?
That's how much well, no, they paid higher than that.
Ooh,
but
okay.
Denver's minimum wage is $18.25.
So it's easier there.
She can hang out for 2 months in Denver and earn a whole summer's worth, still get a break. So look at the indicators that these #1 rankings are based on, and make sure you also like all the underlying reasons we got our good score. Because some of the reasons I don't like this good score is low minimum wage, inequality with women's wages. I mean, we're not hitting anybody's top list if you're a female anywhere. So, like, look at the rankings. Most of the rankings we get, I'm really excited about, and we deserve a lot. And we are on everyone's top 5 list. I think we're obsessed with being #1 on a couple of lists, and I don't know that that's really worthy.
If this kind of
worthy
pace
of
that
our-
you've described it is occurring, that didn't when I was there. I was on the clock for a while, and I was in my last 4 years there. I
agree with you.
wouldn't know if I was sitting next to it what that
I
index
agree
looked like,
that
and we were #1
you
back
all
then.
would attend the conferences, you'd rock around, you'd pick up the brochures
I never
you
went to
liked,
one of them.
and you came home
I
and
went
did
to
what you
NCSO. I
wanted.
didn't go to Alec.
But it's not the case anymore. I want it to be. Here's the thing.
I like Alec.
I
Believe
think-
me, I like Alec, but I didn't go to that because I like to argue with
I
people
think
like
we're better than we're
That's what
better
we're
than
doing.
the cut and paste we're doing.
I know.
So
So
I
they
just
didn't do it when
think-
I was there, but they do it now.
That's my belief.
Okay.
I
All
would.
right.
I would
I'm not
also
there, so I don't
agree
know.
with you
You
that
have
they
some
didn't
insight. I
do
don't
it.
have.
That
Yeah.
when you were there,
Well, I
I think
didn't.
it's the last couple of years, and I would like to see our own far right creativity blossom here and write your own
I'm happy.
stuff.
I'm
Write
happy
your
to
own
write some stuff down if that's what you're
I would
asking.
be fine
I'm
if
ready to
they
go.
looked, but some of the rankings that this is based on, kind of a downer. It's because we have a repressive job market, we don't get paid enough, we don't ask for enough. And we're like, huzzah, how great. Yeah, let's keep our $7.25 minimum wage. I think that some
Yeah.
of it's silly.
There's always trade-offs. I'm wondering what the comparative price of a Chipotle burrito is in Utah compared to Denver. If it's like exponentially more, like you make more money, but
because
it's
a
not.
national chain, right?
Yeah,
Well,
so they kind of
you-
spread the costs.
Denver, I can't even. The reason I'm not even delving into this with you because you love Denver so much. You just.
I know, but
you're-
she's losing her
you're
daughter to
never-
Denver for the summer.
You're never going to give any kind of.
No, I
Denver
choose
is not
to
my.
live
I
in
just want you to
LA.
know.
I choose to live in
Denver is
LA.
not my North Star on how a
I
city
didn't
ought to
say
be
it was,
run.
I'm just saying that's why my daughter is staying
But
there.
I'm not going there.
And because we
I
have
know
the
how much you
#1
love Denver,
rating.
so I'm not even going to go there.
All I'm saying
You
is.
come from an emotional place right now.
Denver,
I can't interrupt
that's good,
that.
that's
All
nice
right,
manipulation.
let's judge the legislative session for a second. When we look back in hindsight, they obviously were tightening their belt this year. There wasn't money for all the projects out there. One that a lot of people are talking about right now are Utah's domestic violence numbers. Our numbers are way higher than they should be. It's a serious problem, and in the last legislative session before this, there was new money given to tracking some of the behaviors and making sure that there were people asking questions anytime there was domestic violence. We've done a lot of reporting here at KUTV on it. There was a couple groups that didn't get the 1.4 million that they were asking for. Maura, is this a place where they should have spent the money in the legislative session, or is this just one of those things where you can't give your money to every place and everyone?
I'm developing a slight disdain for the chest thumping that is, oh, we gave you back 43 cents again this year as a tax refund, and we're continuing to ignore critical things. Now, to make the argument that we needed to clean house is to make the argument that we were overspending in the past. But I would argue that after 20 years of hyper-Republican vigilance, that we're not in a tax and spend state. So to take this rhetoric of like, we had to clean house, I'm like, no. Y'all have been in charge. You guys have been thumping about how well regulated, and remember, we're number one. We just talked about that. So there are really good reasons to collect money and disperse it to those in need, taxation. And low and flat, there are good reasons to do it. And it's unacceptable when a program needs $1.4 million, which at this point is close to pencil dust. And when you look at the individuals that emancipates, when you look at the people, because these aren't high financed. What you want to look at is these big bloated programs where you're wondering about the staff levels and you're wondering about the consequences and the metrics.
Like
these
what
are
DOGE
tight,
does for federal
thin programs.
Yes.
These are not about money. The women that these are protecting, it's not because you get $500,000 when you show up. They're spending their money so well. I think it's unconscionable in a well-balanced state that has enough money for services and has the citizens who support this kind of service. I don't know any Utahns who are also clamoring to not help in domestic violence situations. So I think this is unconscionable for a well-managed state to let this fall through the cracks.
So here's that sounds intuitive, and I know why you're saying it, and I get it. But the reason why you didn't see cleaning house in terms of the budget, because it just was the whim of the legislature this year, was the theme maybe they came up with. Like every state, you can spend what you bring in. You know, we don't print money like the federal government. So the budgets that came in, or the budget projections, were lower. It did require there to be budget cuts. That budget's so big, and there are areas of that budget where I could just cut and paste, since that's our term right now, exactly what Maura said, on some other areas where I thought there should have been more attention paid or more priority given than what that budget ultimately ended up passing looking like. I'm just saying, we can look at this 1.4 in a very myopically and say this is something that obviously should have been done. I would guess there's 100 of these same stories that play out in a state budget where we would look at what was funded versus what was not. I will just say this. I think that because you have these sub-appropriations committees, we do it uniquely in Utah, where all lawmakers are on some sub-appropriations, not just one Ways and Means Committee like Congress does. Everybody hears the testimony of and the request for appropriations, and they make these decisions. And this is the thing that I hope people appreciate. You don't pick all the smart ideas to fund and all the dumb ideas to ignore or cast aside. You're trying your level best to prioritize, and you know when you do that, if you go through that process right, you are not addressing the priorities that you would, if you had the resources, if you had the dollars, if the budget allowed, if enough money came in, you would certainly fund it. But everything can't be funded, so you walk away in that budget process from things that it's not enjoyable. It's not a great process to go through making that budget. I think this falls into that category. I just think there's more than just this one in that budget, and I think that's the nature of having to have a smaller budget or not seeing that budget grow as we've come accustomed to in prior years.
Here's some holes in that thinking. One is, we both know that the sub-appropriation process has been more and more disrespected, and it's a problem. It's a problem with the size of our government. The fact that the executive appropriation process is taking a bigger hand and taking more impact than the subs are. That the rank and file members of the caucus are being asked to just sort of unilaterally only pick one and two issues. It's not a battle for ideas. The other thing that really disqualifies that thinking is we didn't run out of money this year. We prioritized a conceptual, theoretical round of giving back money again, so we could thump our chest once again and say, oh, we gave back. So when I like the notion of the government only spends what it takes in, but you have to be held accountable to the ideological consequences when you say, for no apparent you said, I think it's more important that Heidi Hatch gets $23 than it is that woman gets sheltered. That was said, the money was there, the choice was made.
Tax cut, we're supply siders. We think more money staying in the pocket of Utahns will actually drive more revenues back to the state coffers.
No supply sider thinks that increment is going to spur the economy.
Oh, I would disagree. I would think that collectively, when you look at the high dollar amount that is not going to be taxed, but is going to stay inside the
Then why is
economy
our
and run
spending
around.
down if we just saw this incredible windfall from the state legislature?
It wasn't an incredible windfall. It was a tax cut that left more money in people's pockets, which we think will
Couple
grow the
dozen eggs
economy
for every
and
family.
Take those
But
revenues
you have
and
to,
grow
you
it.
have to choose a
That's how you grow it.
philosophy. Like you're saying, well, we
Politicians can
didn't
put
have
higher
enough
numbers on the
money.
budget. Doesn't mean it's going to arrive.
But
I
we
think
didn't have enough money. Yeah, we did. We gave it. We chose to give a tax
It's
cut
not giving. It's their money
over
in the
having
first, taxpayer money in the
services.
first place. You're just not taxing them as much, and if they don't tax them as much, you're going to get more revenue the following year.
Right. We chose to not provide the services that some member of the legislature asked to provide because we wanted to give a philosophical tax
It's
cut.
not a philosophical. It's real dollars.
Yeah, over a philosophy.
Let's talk about more real dollars. Right now, there's a fight going on the national level with Harvard and some of the other larger private universities over whether the White House and the Trump administration are going to withhold funding from them. Right now, about $9 billion held up for Harvard. A lot of people are looking at this and saying, why are we giving this much tax money from citizens to private universities when they have $50 billion of their own set aside? Maura, is this okay for the federal government to say, we're done, be private universities, do their own thing? Or do we need to make sure that that funding continues and carry on?
So, I mean, the reason this is happening is sort of the autocratic style of Donald Trump, and he's winning a spitting contest. So the rationale for it has very little merit, but skipping that and going to the real consequences of it, I can see if you're taking a superficial point of view that says, why are taxpayers funding Harvard? Well, that would be true if I'm funding a student to go to Harvard, or if I'm funding, I don't know, the rugby club at Harvard. What they fund is research. And I think when the federal government finds a worthy component of research, regardless of where it exists, if it exists in a for-profit think tank or a nonprofit or a system of higher education, but some of the research being done, we're all going to benefit from. ALS research is now going to be cut off. Lots of Alzheimer's research is going to be cut off. So yes, if taxpayers were giving to the rugby team, I would be like, wait, why is the collective caring about Harvard rugby? But let's not just say, well, our taxpayer dollars are going to this rich school. That is entirely simplistic, purposely to throw us off. What it's going for is research that every American benefits from, by and large. And these processes, as you know from your daughter, they're audited quarterly. Academic rigor is competitive.
Yeah.
And it's not processes. There are thousands of candidates who apply from thousands of schools to get a cut. And as you know, the crafting of what it is the research will do goes through months and months of iteration.
Yeah.
This is probably some of our safest investment because of the academic required of it. So, yeah, I don't look at it from a point of view of should we subsidize Harvard? No. Should we be funding research that the government isn't doing but other institutions who do it better are doing? Yes. This is exactly what the collective was designed for.
I've learned more about research in the last year than I would probably like to know for a lifetime, but when your kids start to get involved in it, it's a world you dig into. One thing that I'm frustrated, because obviously those dollars are important for research no matter where they're happening, whether you're talking about the University of Utah or Brigham Young University, which is a private school. But I'm watching my daughter apply for some of these science grants that go towards their study. And the PhD or the research gets a very small amount. It doesn't matter what university you go to, but oftentimes you're seeing 75 and 80% of that grant money that's supposed to be going to research going to the school, and what they do with that money I don't know, and then only a small portion goes to the research. And of course the university has to make sure there's labs and the campus, so there's infrastructure that needs to be there, but what the universities are taking from that research I have a big problem with, because it's like a lot of charities where you're like, where is your dollar really going? Is it going to the research, or is it just
So I
going
love
into
what
a
you're
big
saying,
fund?
because there's several members of Congress,
Yeah.
and actually we had a couple of interested state legislators who are looking at this from the University of Utah perspective, because you're right, the universities and the packages, sometimes they're giving tenured professors and not the researchers.
Yeah.
And that's where the siphoning goes. But if that's the problem we're correcting, then this is so far off of that mark you can't
Look,
even equate it.
the only way you can accept the explanation or the narrative that Maura just framed is if you suspend all understanding of how federal dollars sent to states, sent to the university, sent anywhere, relate to the landing place of where those federal dollars are received. Meaning this, if you accept federal dollars, you accept the federal government's rules. And if you don't want to accept the federal government's rules, then you don't need to take the dollars. This happened to the state of Utah with Bush's No Child Left Behind. We didn't want to do No Child Left Behind because it didn't make any sense. We couldn't find a certified teacher in rural Utah to teach math, okay? We had teachers that had a teaching degree, but nothing about No Child Left Behind could we actually replicate accurately the way it was supposed to be. It's as a federal law. We were told clearly back in the early 2000s, if you don't do it, you're going to lose your federal funds. You look at the speed limit back in the day when they lowered it down to 55 miles an hour. It's not like every state went, we think 55 miles an hour would make a great speed limit. It was, you're not going to get the federal funds for your roads if you don't comply with our 55 mile an hour speed limit requirement. And all of a sudden, all the states fell in line. I don't know why Harvard thinks that with federal rules, and Obama played this like a fiddle. If I have rules and you have our money, then you're going to follow our rules. This is what you're going to do. Now all of a sudden we don't like this current administration, and now we're just clutching at pearls at how the federal government has requirements for our funding. How could this be? We're going to hurt these kids that are being funded. This is a Monday of any given day of any given administration, Republican or Democrat. That's the way it's always been. The solution to that is wean yourself off, state, university, anyone else, off of those federal funds if you don't like the rules that they're propagating on us. And I have said that over and over again. I would like to see the state of Utah, which doesn't have as high of a dependency on federal dollars, but still has it. If we really want to be a sovereign state, we can't depend on this much by way of federal dollars. If Harvard doesn't like what the administration is saying by way of discrimination and making sure kids that are Jewish are able to be on campus and not feel afraid and all these other things, if they don't like the rules that the administration is arguing for, then don't take the money. You got Hillsdale College, a much smaller college, but they don't accept federal funds. It's not like it's never been done. This is some like new revelation. If you take the federal funds, you obligate yourself to some degree to federal law. And you might not like this current administration, but this is no different than the way it's always been played. So,
Yes.
and if we're going to talk about one last thing, if we're all about taxing the rich, because taxing is just telling me that if we're all going to, cry a river over the Harvard graduates that get to take from their taxes and deduct how much they contribute back to that giant $63 million plus billion dollar foundation at Harvard, so they don't have to pay as much federal taxes because they can give it to Harvard. If Harvard's, is full of, I would say, at least upwardly mobile people, boo-hoo. If they don't like the rules that the federal money they're receiving, they don't want to keep them. They seem wealthy enough to be able to do all the good things they want to do without accepting the taxpayer money if they don't want to do it. And if they do, again, these are tax breaks for wealthy institutions, but they also are attached to wealthy individuals who get to enjoy tax breaks by giving to their alma mater. If you hate taxes and you want to tax the rich, then you shouldn't be fighting at all about how Harvard either complying with federal law or not getting federal funds.
So I'm going to ignore the conflating that Greg does, but on to the
I can have two
key
opinions
issue.
at once on one
The
issue.
key
That's
issue,
not
he's
conflating.
missing a really remarkable piece of differentiation. We have never seen anything like this. What Greg described was what every president in the past had done. Okay, you don't like highway funding, so I'm going to take away your highway funding because you don't want to apply. The best example he gave is No Child Left Behind. I didn't like the policy, so I didn't take this money. That's not what this president's doing. This president is saying, anything I don't like about you, this is completely unrelated funding. He's saying you have to agree with everything I say, or I'm going to take your ALS funding. This is not about the subject matter. This is not about saying, I don't want to follow the rules that are attached to this funding stream. In the past, presidents have said, okay, you want my money? You want my money on this?
Policy on DEI?
You don't, that's not what he's taking away. They're unrelated pockets of money. He's saying, here's my authoritarian philosophy, and if you don't agree with my dictatorship, I'm going to take away all your money. In the past, what the federal government has said is, here's the rules for the highway funds. If you don't want to play my rules, you don't want to build a
That is
berm,
exactly what he's doing
he's
here.
not doing that at all. He's saying my philosophy has to be followed,
It isn't
just like most
innocuous.
authoritarian leaders.
It's specific.
His directive is not attached to the funds, and that is markedly different. If we're not looking at the authoritarianism here, you're
Oh, my
missing the
goodness.
entire forest through the
There
trees.
is
And by the
specific
way,
asks of that university to comply with
Harvard
federal law,
is
which they
not
don't want to
whining.
do.
Harvard's not whining. They're like, fine, we won't take these federal funds. So if you
Then
want
why
to.
are we arguing about it? If they're good and we're good, then why is it an issue?
Because it's a problem with how the authoritarian regime is saying, you have to follow lockstep with me or you will not get to talk to the federal government, is a remarkably different statement than, if you want highway funding, here are the rules
You're
to get highway
suggesting that
funding.
this lacks complete specificity, which it does
Exactly.
not.
It
It has
does.
specific, there were
It
specific,
does.
because look, they were agreeing to these
Unassociated.
things and they fired their president and went with a
Unassociated.
new one because they didn't want to follow the rules that they would apply.
This is
to
about
comply with federal law.
an authoritarian regime who's trying to get compliance.
I feel like there's nothing we agreed on this week. Can we agree that at least it's gonna be a nice weekend for Easter,
I
sunshine?
love Easter.
Yeah.
I hope the weather gets better. I
It's
really
supposed
do.
to. It's not supposed to
Yeah,
be
the sun
warm,
is
but
coming
it's
out.
supposed to be
So,
I know.
Are you planning like a great Easter egg roll at your house?
I love Easter a lot. I'm gonna give a shout out to Red Butte, who's in their 40th year, so they're gonna have a little party, but I think it's
Oh,
gonna
fun.
be a little chilly, but this starts Red Butte Gardens 40th year, so if you haven't been to Red Butte in a while, you should.
It's been a long time since I've been up there. It is beautiful.
Yeah, summer concerts are
Yeah.
coming out, so we're gonna do a little Easter action. My brother's coming into town. It's
All
gonna be
right.
a good weekend.
Do you hide Easter eggs with little political things inside them? I don't know, debates for the family? What do you do, Greg?
Back in the day when the kids were young, the Easter bunny used to come and there were eggs to go out and find, but not anymore.
You're all too grown up.
No.
Okay.
I know, I've
Although
mostly forgotten
kids do the
too.
basket still, but it's kind of, blooms off the rose on that whole.
I know, my 19-year-old, I was just thinking, oh shoot, I've done nothing. Can I
Is he
go?
gonna come home?
He is going to come home from his camping trip, hopefully alive. So I might get him some like new socks or something fancy or something for
There
his
you go.
Easter basket. So, thanks for listening to us this week, and thank you both for kindly debating the issues. We'll be back again next week, talking all the tough issues again. Tell your friends about us, give us a like, and we'll be back next week.